Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something we all deal with, but maybe don't always nail down: giving feedback and motivating people.
That's right. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Just tell someone, good job, or do this differently. But the reality and what the research shows is much more nuanced.
Exactly. We're moving beyond just like simple good or bad. We want to explore some really actionable research-backed strategies, things that can genuinely transform how we communicate, how we manage.
Yeah, the goal here is to give you, our listeners, a bit of a shortcut. We've sifted through the insights to get to what really works for effective management.
So let's start by deconstructing feedback itself. You mentioned it's not just positive or negative. What are we really talking about?
Well, the sources point to four main types. There's reinforcing feedback, redirecting feedback, evaluating feedback, and then one that's often completely missed, unconscious feedback.
Okay, four types. Let's maybe tackle them one by one. Reinforcing feedback. That sounds like the positive stuff, right? The pat on the back.
It is positive, yes, but it's more strategic than just a casual compliment. Its real purpose is to encourage the repetition of specific behaviors or outcomes you want to see more of.
Ah, okay. So it's about strengthening what works.
Precisely. And it's arguably the type you should be using most often. It really helps build a supportive team atmosphere, boosts motivation, commitment, the whole nine yards.
But it has to be done right, I imagine, not just a vague, well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Two key things. It needs to be timely. Saying great job today is way more powerful than bringing it up next week. And crucially, it has to be specific.
Can you give an example of what that specificity looks like?
Sure. Instead of just good presentation, you might say, I saw how well you handled the questions after your presentation to the steering committee yesterday. You really nailed those tricky ones about the budget. I was seriously impressed.
Right, so the person knows exactly what was good and why. That makes sense.
It tells them precisely what behavior to repeat in the future.
Okay, so that's reinforcing. What about when things aren't going so well? That leads us to redirecting feedback.
Exactly. And the key distinction here is the focus. It's not about punishing past mistakes. It's about stopping an action or behavior that isn't working and guiding the person towards a new, more effective one. It's future focused.
So less you messed up, more here's how we can improve this going forward.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And delivering this kind of feedback, well, it takes care. It needs to be considered very specific, again, sensitive to the person, and if the situation warrants, delivered pretty urgently.
What kind of preparation does a manager need for that?
They really need to be clear in their own head first. What was the specific situation? What was the undesirable action or behavior? What was the actual result or impact of that? And crucially, what's the desired action or outcome for the future?
Got it. Can you give us an example for redirecting feedback?
Okay, how about this? Jenny, your team were 2 days late submitting the advertising proposal. Now, this meant the sales team had to reschedule several client meetings, which wasn't ideal. In future, I really need you to manage the team's workload more effectively to make sure we hit the deadlines you've agreed with other departments.
Okay, I see. It's direct, it explains the impact, and it sets a clear expectation for the future without being overly harsh.
That's the goal. Firm, fair, future-focused.
All right, so we have reinforcing for the good stuff.
Yeah.
Redirecting for improvement. What's the third type? Evaluating feedback.
Yes, evaluating. This one serves a different purpose. It's about explaining someone's performance in comparison, maybe compared to expectations or standards, or even compared to others on the team.
So this sounds more like performance reviews, promotion discussions, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's most effective in those more formal contexts where you need to make judgments about performance level, often linked to things like salary or advancement.
Is there potential downside to using it?
Definitely. The caution here is not to use it for routine, everyday conversations. Because it's inherently comparative and judgmental, if you use it too often or in the wrong context, it can really damage trust and make people feel constantly under scrutiny.
Right. It could feel like you're always being ranked or rated.
Yeah, and that's generally not motivating for day-to-day work. Save it for when that kind of evaluation is necessary and expected.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Now, the fourth type you mentioned was unconscious feedback. This sounds subtle. What is that exactly?
It really is subtle
Yeah.
and often incredibly powerful. This is all the feedback we give without even realizing it. It's transmitted through our tone of voice, our body language, folded arms, avoiding eye contact, facial expressions, even things like interrupting someone.
Wow. So stuff we might not even be aware we're doing.
Absolutely. And the impact can be huge, sometimes completely overriding the actual words we speak. It's also a major source of cross-cultural misunderstandings. Well, For example, a manager might smile to soften feedback, thinking they're being encouraging. But in another culture, that smile might be misinterpreted as mockery, as if they're laughing at the person.
That's a really important point. It reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote.
Yes, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That perfectly captures the power of unconscious feedback. It's about the feeling you leave someone with.
So the key takeaway here is massive self-awareness for managers.
Huge. It's about trying to understand how you're perceived, not just what you intend. Maybe even asking for feedback on your feedback style, your nonverbals. It's tough, but vital.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so we understand the 4 types. Now let's talk practicalities. How do we deliver any type of feedback effectively? You mentioned checking the moment first.
Yes, always. It seems basic, but just barging in can put someone on the defensive immediately. Always ask if it's a convenient time before you start.
What would that sound like?
Something simple and respectful, like, "Hey Larry, are you open to some feedback on that sales pitch from this morning?" Or, "Do you have a minute, Carla? I'd like to discuss the report you sent over." It gives them a moment to prepare mentally.
Makes sense. Now, what about that old classic, the feedback sandwich? You know, positive, negative, positive. That's still a way to go?
The sandwich. Well, the thinking on that has evolved. Many sources now suggest, actually, to drop the sandwich
Really? Why?
because it can dilute the important message. The redirecting part often gets lost. And sometimes the positive bits can feel insincere, like you're just padding it out.
So what's the alternative then?
Often, it's more effective to give the redirecting feedback first, clearly, directly, but sensitively. Then you can close the conversation with some genuine reinforcing feedback about something else, or perhaps about their willingness to discuss the issue. It separates the messages more cleanly.
Interesting. So be direct with the tough stuff, then end on a positive note, but maybe not directly related to the criticism.
Or related to their reaction, yeah. The point is clarity and honesty.
Okay. And you also mentioned making it two-way communication. It shouldn't just be a lecture, right?
Absolutely not. The worst thing is just delivering the feedback and then asking, "Do you have anything to say?" That often shuts people down.
So how do you genuinely invite dialogue?
You need to create a safe space. Ask open-ended questions that show you're actually interested in their perspective. Things like, "How do you feel about this?" Or, "What's your take on the situation?" Or even, "What could I be missing here?"
Ah, that last one shows real humility. What could I be missing?
Exactly. It signals that it's a conversation, not a verdict. It shows you value their input and understand you might not have the full picture.
That's powerful. Now, one last crucial element in delivery, bias. We all have biases, conscious or unconscious. How does that play into giving feedback fairly?
It's a huge factor. Managers need to be aware of common biases like recency bias, where you only remember the last thing someone did, or gender bias, or similar to me bias, where you favor people like yourself.
And awareness is the first step. But how do you actively combat it when giving feedback?
The key is to anchor your feedback in specifics. Use concrete facts, observable evidence, documented examples. Avoid assumptions, vague jargon, or stereotypes. Stick to what you actually saw or measured.
So data and observation over gut feeling or general impressions.
Pretty much. And another powerful tool, as we touched on with unconscious feedback, is for managers to actively seek feedback on themselves. Be open, be patient when receiving it, and be genuinely grateful. It helps you see your own blind spots, including potential biases.
That full circle of feedback is really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a great look at feedback. But feedback often aims to change behavior, which brings us to motivation. There's actually an equation for this.
Yes, quite a neat one that captures the core drivers.
Mhm.
Motivation, expectancy plus value cost of action plus cost of inaction. So VACA plus CI.
Okay, let's break that down. E is expectancy.
Right, that's the person's belief in their own ability to actually succeed at the task. Do they think they can do it?
Okay, V is value.
Yes. How useful or beneficial do they perceive the task to be? What's in it for them or for the team or the company? Does it align with their own goals or values?
Makes sense. Then we subtract CA, cost of action.
Yeah, that's the perceived downside of doing the task. How much time will it take? How much effort, resources, stress, or even potential pain is involved?
Right, the hurdles. And finally, we add CI, cost of inaction. This one feels less obvious.
It often is. This is the consequence of not doing the task. What happens if they delay or just don't do it at all? Often problems get bigger, more expensive, or harder to fix down the line. That potential future pain can be a motivator too.
That's fascinating. So it's not just the pros and cons of doing it, but also the hidden cost of not doing it.
Exactly. And a common mistake managers make is focusing on only one of these factors, like only emphasizing the value or only trying to boost expectancy.
But the most effective approach considers all four.
Yes. The best interventions look at the whole picture. Can we increase their belief they can succeed? Expectancy. Can we highlight the value more clearly?
Yeah.
Value. Can we reduce the perceived cost or difficulty, cost of action? And can we make the cost of inaction clearer?
That framework seems really useful for diagnosing why someone might not be motivated.
It is. And it leads to practical strategies. For instance, dealing with procrastination often involves tackling expectancy and the initial cost of action. People often get stuck because they feel overwhelmed or don't know where to start.
So how can a manager help with that?
Sometimes it's just about helping them take that very first tiny step. Break the task down. Offer simple encouragement.
Like what?
Maybe something like, look, Jenny, you don't have to have the whole thing perfect right now. You just need to start. What's the absolute first thing you could do?
Just getting the ball rolling.
Exactly. And once they decide on that first step, reinforce that decision. Great. Doing X sounds like a perfect place to begin. It builds momentum and tackles that initial inertia.
So tying this all together, effective feedback and understanding the levers of motivation, these aren't simple checkboxes, are they?
Not at all. They're skills. They require real awareness of yourself and others, careful preparation, and genuine empathy. But they are absolutely learnable.
Which is encouraging. So as we wrap up, a final thought for you, our listener. Think about the impact of your own feedback, especially the unconscious kind. How are you really making people feel?
And consider this.
Yeah.
How might actively seeking feedback for yourself not only uncover your blind spots, but actually make you a much better leader, communicator, and motivator?
So the challenge for today is, what's one specific technique, either from the feedback types or the motivation equation, that you're going to consciously try to apply, maybe starting today?